Just started. Yeah.
All right, we're live.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
sorry about that. Hey, if everybody has been, hopefully you just got here, but I'm Steve Sandy, and this little guy right down here, I'm going to have to figure out how to do split screen here, or make him the big face there. We'll switch back and forth.
Well, just click on my face, and that will magnify me.
There he is. That is Mr. Marty Edwards. You're here for AWT TV episode 43. It's July 17th, 2018. And if you're watching this, you are not watching the All-Star game.
That's right. Now, All-Star is relative. Maybe some will think this is the All-Star game.
We are All-Star.
Yeah.
Well, in our minds, we are. Well, maybe not. I don't know. That's a good question there.
And we're doing something new tonight.
I was going to just see if I can actually see this event in. Oh yeah, there we are. Cool. I was going to just see. And now I better mute it here. But anyway, I was just checking to see that we were on YouTube, actually on YouTube, and yes, we are. So there is a good thing there.
Okay, yeah. Anyone watching, we're doing something new tonight. We're using Google Hangouts.
And the reason we're doing that is because I am cheap. No, actually, it's because we don't make all that much money. And seriously, I loved Zoom. Zoom was excellent in terms of just the picture quality, the ability to share things. But it was costing me $105 a month. And I just kind of got to the point and went, is this really worth $105 a month, considering we were doing 1 or 2 shows? And my brain said, nope. So we decided that we were going to try, and Marty suggested, got to try Google Hangouts. And right now, it looks like it's working just fine. So thank you, Marty.
Yeah, you're welcome. I use this a lot for our church to broadcast 3 times a week. It works reliably. They let us broadcast up to 8 hours continuously without a stop, which we never need. And I don't know what we'll have to check later, but after a while they upped us up to high definition automatically. Just 720, but it looks great, you know, for us. So I really like Google Hangouts. And for what it's worth, if I'm somewhere else and we want to do a show, you know, I can do Google Hangouts from the phone.
Well, that means, you know, if I happen to be available while I'm on my trip and I'm on the ship and I have enough bandwidth, which I doubt, we could try doing.
Right.
Well, my wife would kill me. And what are you doing?
It'll be here before you know it. The JAMP conference is coming up. We had a remote broadcast then, but this year my wife is going alone. I'm sending her as we're sending her as the Apple World Today envoy. Yes. And so she's already got that arranged mostly. Well, let me ask you. She's excited about it, going and covering. We had a great time last year, and so, but she's going to be going alone this time. Let me ask you a question. I have a local friend, you know, the lady I've referred to as the lady with the fiber. Yeah. She asked me to ask you tonight. She's interested in a MacBook, but doesn't want to pay full price. See if she likes it right off, you know, and maybe something used. What are good sources of used MacBooks? Where would you look?
Well, I tell you, there are actually a couple good places to find used MacBooks. And one of them, strangely enough, is Apple. Of course, they do have the, I guess you could call them returned MacBooks, and that people have brought in. You know, maybe they bought it and they said, this just isn't what I need, or I need something with a little bit more power, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. But the refurbs, and basically what you do is just go to the Apple website and search for refurbished. And sometimes they have some pretty good deals. However, that's only going to drop $200 or $300 off of the price. But, you know, if you're looking at something like a MacBook Air, MacBook Airs are great little computers. I used one for many years doing teaching, and when I was actually working for TUA the first couple of years, I had a MacBook Air, and you know, they start at about $1,000. You get a couple $100 off of it. You're looking at $800, which, yeah, it's a lot more expensive than a cheap Windows machine, but hey,
Yeah. You get what you pay for. I like the Macs a lot.
what
I
do you?
did, yeah, I did look at the refurbished. I told her my personal opinion. I would avoid eBay on a high ticket item like that you want. You just don't know what you're getting, you know. And I know that that other store, B&H, I think it is, Photo, has a lot of good deals from time to time. And I think you've talked about them.
Yeah,
But
one other place I would suggest is Gazelle, and I know that they do sell, you know, because what they are mainly is a company that you sell used devices to. They refurb them, and they usually have some pretty good deals on equipment. Also, you might want to check OWC at macsales.com. A little bit of a comment here. I do write for them, so you know, I do know about them a little bit.
I'll tell them Steve sent me.
Yes, tell him Steve sent you there.
All right, I'm writing. I'd already looked at the refurbished, and I noticed the price savings wasn't extreme, but you probably get a really good notebook.
Yeah, in fact, they do give you the full Apple warranty when you get one from them.
And the last one was I wrote down Gazelle OWC. What was it?
Macsales.com.
All right, I will pass these along and to her. She's interested, and she actually is a professional musician. She sings for, you know, she gets paid to perform and does some shows and various things. And I had told her when she was interested in MacBook, I said, well, you know, professional musicians really use MacBooks. She said, that's why I want one. And so maybe some, you know, recording of music, even a MacBook Air. She's not going to be doing video editing. It'll probably be just at most recording. It ought to handle anything, I feel.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's funny because it seems like most of the live music venues I've gone to over the last couple of years, you know, you never see Windows machines. There are always Macs sitting there. You know, Mac and music, or Apple and music, really go together like I don't know what they go together like.
Well, you're right, you know, and she was a singer early in her life, started at 11 at a country show and did for 18 years. Now she's getting back into it some, you know.
Oh, great.
So she wanted a Mac. So, and my wife is truly a professional musician because she taught music for years. She taught music on the college level. So she's got a MacBook Pro. And that reminds me, you know, the one that she got that we love so much, they discontinued last week. Was it the 2015?
Yeah.
That was the one with all the ports, you know, various, had the SD card slot and USB. You know.
And didn't have just USB-C ports on it.
Right. So we really, really are glad we bought that. I actually was led to it because the logo lit up. You know, that's truly form over function, but we really like it. And it's her main computer. She games on it. And that leads me into a little news this week. I know you know, obviously, there's new MacBooks. Yeah. I was telling my friend that's interested in one that the top one, if you max it out, it was right at $7,000.
Yeah.
She sent back one emote. It was the round face with eyes bugging out.
That's kind of what I did when I heard about that. They said, you know, if you want 32 gigs of RAM, and I think it was it a 2 terabyte?
4
terabyte. Wow. And the top end i9 chip, and it was like,
it was $66.99, I think. So let's just say 7,000.
That's crazy.
It is. I mean, I could buy a car for that, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best car, but you know, yeah. I think Dennis had a good article this week. I meant to tell Dennis, I appreciate the shout out in it, that save your money. You really don't need 32 gig of RAM for most things. I do not personally have a machine with more than 8. I've got the Mac here, and I've got a Windows machine over here that has 8. But Ruby, her MacBook has 16. Our PC at church that we broadcast with has 16. But I've never used more than 8. And I could probably use it, but haven't needed it.
Yeah, the MacBook Pro that I'm using right here is 8 gigs of RAM, and to be honest with you, it's perfectly fine for
Yeah.
most of the things I'm doing. When of course, I've got a really fast processor in here too. I'm using the what was it? Yeah, it's a 3.1 gigahertz. It's an Intel Core i5. Yeah, maybe it's not the fastest machine out there, but it does, when I need portability, it's there for me, and it does some pretty impressive things. When I'm at home, of course, I use that iMac, and it's, I don't know, quad core or hexa-core i7. It's fast. It's, and that's got 16 gigs of RAM. But yeah, I can use that to do video rendering. I've used it to do 360 rendering. It does some amazing work, and I'm doing that with 16 gigs of RAM. I have to agree with you and with Dennis. I'm not sure you need more than 16 gigs of RAM anymore.
No, the only way you might, I do run a lot of, I love using virtual machines.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to have a few virtual machines, give 4 gig or even 8 gig to 2 to 4 virtual machines, it might help. But just most everyday use, you're not going to. And I'm not going to be doing a lot of that on a notebook anyway. So.
Yeah, that's, I'm really hoping we keep hearing these rumors that Apple is, well, and I think the MacBooks that came out, or the MacBook Pros, were really a good example that, yeah, they are kind of re-energizing the Mac line. But I'm really, really hoping that what they do is consider coming out with either a slightly bumped up MacBook Air, still go with the USB-C if you want to do that. But, they need to have a laptop that is going to be approachable for a lot of folks. And let's face it, you start taking a look at a MacBook Pro. I bought this one, and I think it cost me $16.99 or somewhere around there, a 13-inch model there. But for a lot of folks, that is way out of the realm of possibility. I had an interesting conversation with my sister the other day, and she's a Mac fan. She's used Macs for probably as long as I have. And she's working on doing some home inspections right now. The company that she's working for basically requires, and I thought this was one of the most god-awful things I've heard of, but they require their employees to use Internet Explorer. And of course, you can't run Internet Explorer on a Mac anymore.
Right.
Unless you're running a virtual machine. And if you get a virtual machine, that means that you have to have Windows anyway, the Windows software. And if you've got the Windows software, it's going to cost you, a few bucks.
Yeah, exactly. That is odd, asking to run Internet Explorer.
Yeah, so she looked at the various options. We talked about some things like, well, maybe you'd be able to run it under what's that program from Code Weavers? I can't think of the name of it, but I know the name of the company, Code Weavers. I can't think of the app, but it basically allows you to run individual apps, some individual apps, as apps on the Mac. Anyway, we looked at it. The only thing it would run was like Internet Explorer 8 or something like that. And we got to talking about it, and I said, probably, I hate to say this, but what you ought to do is see if you can find a good used PC that's running Windows 10. She looked locally. Somebody had an Acer laptop, touch screen, with a I don't know what you want to call it, kind of non-manufacturer version, non-OEM version of Windows. And she got this thing, and she said, I hate to say this, but so far I'm impressed. Guess how much she spent on it?
$249.
$100.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious. And this was just something somebody put on Craigslist and said, hey, I've got this machine. I'm not using it anymore. It's, I don't know, 3 years old, somewhere around there. and she bought it. And for the work she's doing, it's perfect. And it was much less than taking a Mac and trying to turn it into a Windows PC. So, there are situations where you just have to have Windows, and thank God that there are cheap machines on Craigslist.
Well, what I'm doing here, the friend that's interested in the MacBook, she had bought for something she was doing a brand new, I believe it was an Acer Windows 10 from Amazon, but it was brand new. I think it was maybe 200, low 240s. But she decided she didn't want it, wanted to know if I was interested in it. So I said, yes. She said, well, I'll take 125 for it. So I bought it from her. It's like a 15-inch or so, maybe more. It's pretty big Windows 10 computer. And I've got it set in full-time service to run to show all the data from, I have a weather station here.
Yeah.
And I have it set out because my mom loves to check that. I walk by and check it. It does nothing but shows weather data. It runs perfectly. Windows 10 is fast. I have VNC installed on it so I can remote into it if I need to do anything, reboot it for updates. And, it is another tool, and I think even we owe ourselves as, Apple users, don't dismiss other things for a certain job. It's like, on a farm, cars are great to go cross-country touring, but, on a farm, I want a pickup, and sometimes an old beat-up pickup is the best choice.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to be using it to haul manure, you don't want a brand new, Ford F-350.
Right. You want something you can throw rocks in and brush and drive through the brush. And sometimes the older used PCs are like that. They will work. I'll tell you what I've got put, it's actually in our bedroom. I've never mentioned this on the show. Years ago, this was 10 to 12 years ago, someone, is that lady again, her son gave the lady that did the PC and wants a Mac, her son had do you remember the IBM ThinkPads that were built like tanks?
Yes, I do. I had 2 or 3 of them.
I'm sure you did working. I think that's some of the ones they used on the shuttle I had read, in those early days. Well, he had one that wouldn't work, wouldn't boot up or anything, didn't really have any software. So he just gave it to me. I took it and was able to get a CD, get it to recognize an external CD or did something. I got Windows 2000 installed on it. So I use it to monitor through a VNC connection, the security cameras here around the clock. It's been running about 12 or 13 years, just runs. It just works and it's still going. And it's a great computer.
Yeah, it's so funny because, there are certain situations where, somebody will talk to me and they'll say, I've got a, 12-year-old kid, really wants a MacBook of some sort, like a MacBook Air, but I'm just, really concerned about this. I really can't spend the money.
Right.
And I pointed people at, and excuse me for saying this, but I pointed, and I'm losing my voice from talking about it. But anyway, I pointed people at some of the rather inexpensive Chromebooks. And it's like, for a kid who's going to be doing a lot of web work and, just needs a certain little subset of apps and a lot of games, Chromebooks are fine and they're very inexpensive.
Well, they are. And some of the newer Chromebooks will run all the Android apps.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've got access to a Play Store with, close to 3 million apps on it.
Yeah.
So, there are different tools. Apple really is, special tools for special jobs. They're great. When we went to the Jamp Festival last year or conference, almost everybody had a MacBook, as you would expect. I did see a few Dells and such like, but almost everybody's a MacBook. But there are times that you need a PC, and I'll be honest. Windows 10 is coming to its own. It's almost as maintenance free as Mac OS. It just really does work pretty well.
Yeah, and it's funny because I can recall, there's probably about 8 or 9 years ago when I was really doing a lot of consulting work. Apple was still selling their servers, the Xserve servers, and I just had a hell of a time getting those things set up properly. I mean, you sit down, get it working, everything would be fine and dandy, and then something would go wrong. And I spent God knows how many days on the phone with the Xserve support group saying, why am I having this issue with this? And they'd say, well, we're not exactly sure, and then they terminal into it, or SSH into it, and they'd fiddle around with it for a while, and well, we think we may have it going here. And towards the end of the time that I was doing this stuff, it was like, I give up. And I was telling people, it's like, you want a server? I'm going to get you either set up with a Linux server, which at the time they were getting pretty damn good and pretty darn cheap, or if you have specific needs that you do need to have some Windows apps running, maybe we'll look at a Windows server. But for the most part, I started setting people up with Linux servers, and they work just fine. In fact, I've got several of these people are 8 years on. They're still using the same box that we bought them. We bought a Dell fairly powerful computer for the time, got it set up, hooked it in, and the things are sitting there just chugging away as mail servers, web servers, file servers.
Right.
Those are the three things that they needed. They're working just fine. If I had gone, and I did have clients who said, no, I absolutely have to have an Xserve to do, what I could do for maybe $5,000 in the Linux world with, backup drives and, backup arrays and, you name it, just piles of stuff, usually cost me well over $20,000.
Wow.
Get the same type of functionality on the Mac. Yeah, there were some things that we could do that were pretty cool, like, you brought up a Mac and it automatically saw the server sitting over there and said, oh, I'll use this server to back up, my machine. Yeah, that was very cool. I could, basically with the Linux machines, we had a particular client that we ran on the Macs, and it took me maybe 20 seconds to get it, hooked in and working with that. So it wasn't a big deal, but
yeah,
it
wasn't a big deal either, was it?
Yeah,
because they were popular. I did for a time. Last decade, maybe 10, 12 years ago, I did IT work for our county, and I took care of the computers at the 911 center, and they were just a Dell Blade servers.
Yeah.
And they were sort of, I say, a bear to work with in a way, maybe to program, but not really. Once you got them going, they just ran, And so now they farm it out to another area. Everything's over IP and fiber to some, regional 911 center, but so they don't even use them anymore. But, some would say, well, that old IBM ThinkPad you're using with Windows 2000, of course, I don't do any kind of security running on it. It's almost security by obscurity. Who's going to hack into a, a 12, 15-year-old ThinkPad running Windows 2000? Just a little side note here. That was the last version of Windows. I'll ask you, do you have any idea what it was the last version of Windows to do or not do? I just happen to know this because I fooled with it so much.
I'm trying to think, and I should know a lot more about Windows 2000 than I do, because I was the project manager on a 12,000 seat Windows 2000 rollout.
Wow.
When I was working for IBM, but
well, I will tell you, it's the last version of Windows that required a key to install. You just installed it.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have the code. But after that, they did. The way I got that, and I remember it's February, I think 23rd of 2000. Microsoft, I'd logged onto their site one time. Oh, I love going back to these old memories. And they were giving away copies to promote it. I just signed up my, whatever address. Never thought any more about it. One day FedEx pulled up. There's a copy of Windows 2000 I'd won. And so that's how I got it.
Yeah, Windows, I got to admit, Microsoft was always really good you know, especially with the people who are influencers, you know, who were doing podcasting or they had a website or something like that, they were always really good about handing out free copies. And, you know, back in the, like the XP days,
Right.
I remember that right around that point, I was doing, if I can remember the name of it now, Microsoft Mobius conferences. And of course, you know, they want to get you into the entire ecosystem. So they were like handing things over.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely tried it. You know, it was like, yeah, I'm not going to turn this down. Speaking of Microsoft, and I had to bring this up, I saw something the other day. They apparently had a project called Andromeda that
Been reading about it.
yeah, and Andromeda was the idea that you would have a device, you know, handheld device that would split open kind of like this,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have this much larger tablet-sized device that you can carry in a pocket. And the idea was they were planning on making it, you know, it was going to be touch screen, it was going to be Windows 10. You know, it sounded like a pretty cool device. And apparently they decided just recently to just can the project. And there were a couple of reasons, and I thought this was absolutely fascinating. One feeling that they had was that if they didn't get it exactly perfect, you know, so that everybody who picked one up, you know, opened this thing up, looked at it and went, wow, I've got to have this.
Right.
That it would not only, if it wasn't perfect and didn't sell bazillions of copies, that it would not only, you know, hurt that device, but it would also hurt Windows and would also hurt the Surface devices. So they canned the project. They said, not going to do it. And in a way, I kind of have to feel sorry for Microsoft because here they had a concept that was really kind of cool. In fact, I can remember about probably 5 or 6 years ago, they did a similar, they were looking at a similar type of device that you would flip open and it would have all this stuff. It was going to be Windows Phone, Windows Mobile on it. This was actually going to be a Windows 10 device. But, you know, I really, in a way, kind of feel sorry for them that they aren't willing to go out and try something completely different.
Right. Yeah, no, it just seems like Microsoft's really struggling right now. You know, when we were at JAMP last year, you remember I ran into and showed you the video of Brad Anderson, vice president, one of the vice presidents of Microsoft. And I just commented because I actually do like the look of the Windows Phone, always did, and the software. And I said, I was really hoping there would be a third player in the mobile operating system. He said, we were too. And that's all he ever said about it. You know, seemed a little disheartened and down. They just couldn't do it, you know. And so I had to mention something. I will never forget my wife's mother's birthday. It's August 24th. But that year in 95, August 24th changed computing history. Do you know what happened?
95.
That's it.
Yeah. I was on an airplane going to Europe.
You know, they promoted that so much. Even my mother, who obviously, well, she's got a cell phone, but didn't know much, you know, anything really about computers, no cell phone then. She said, are you going to get that Windows thing? She knew something about Windows was coming out. And that was my mother-in-law's birthday. And when it rolls around, I tell Ruby her mother was born on Windows 95 day. But I'm impressed that you knew that's what happened. That was a pivotal day in computing history because that brought 32-bit to the masses. We didn't have 32-bit before that.
Well, and the thing I remember about that the most, we had actually, and I was working for a local utility company at the time. This was just like, well, I shouldn't say I was working for the utility company because at that point I was working for IBM, but we had just switched over. And I think I've mentioned this before, but it was like the first big project that I did when I was working for IBM was to switch all the Mac users in the company over to Windows 95. So I had to be this person who sat down, learned Windows 95, tried to figure out how we were going to deploy it to a bunch of people manually, because at that point we really didn't have any way of pushing it out to a bunch of machines. And also how to take the applications that people were using in the Mac world and have something that would do exactly the same work on the Mac.
Right.
And there were some departments that we just had to say, sorry, they're staying with their Mac, whether, parent company likes it or not. But yeah, so I do remember that day really well. I also remember the day before I went on that trip, August 23rd, I was helping this company. And like I said, they're a very large public utility company, 10 states or something like that now. But at that time, we were strictly, local, state of Colorado and Wyoming. And it was crazy. We were putting up their first website. And I was going to Europe. Barb and I were going to be going to Europe the next day. And I hand-coded the entire website for this organization. We sent it to an IBM server. We had DNS set up, so you'd put in this company's name, it would go right out to their website. And of course, I mean, as simple as this thing was, it was just a static web page. We still ran into problems. This is the day before I'm going on a trip. I'm sitting there with, it's myself, one network person, and a person from the corporate communications department of this company. And we're sitting there just, I'd do something, and then the corporate communications person would go, I don't like the way we said that earlier. Let's rewrite that.
Right.
Or can we change this? So that was going on. Plus, I'm working with the networking guy, trying to make sure that, we're hitting the server properly. Well, the person from corporate communications was sitting there just coughing. And I was going, are you feeling okay? Oh, I'm feeling fine. I'm feeling fine. And this kept going on. Sure enough, we get on the airplane the next day after, one of the more stressful days I've had in my career. Get on the plane the next day, and we're flying to, I think we ended up going to Minneapolis, and then from Minneapolis over to Europe. And I started feeling a sore throat.
Oh, boy.
I had strep like you would not believe when we were on that trip for about a week. It was miserable. So, yeah, I remember that period very well. Also, being on the airplane, and like you said, that was back in the days when they'd actually hand you a copy of a newspaper.
Right.
And all the newspapers were talking about Windows 95 launches, and we get to Minneapolis, we're in the airport, I'm looking at the TV screen, and they're talking about, the lines for Windows 95 today.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Oh, that's good memories. It's hard to believe. I look back, I was in my lower 30s when that happened, and boy, how times have changed. And, I booted it up the other day. I have a copy of Windows 95 in a virtual machine. I booted it up just to sort of see what it looked like. So,
well, yeah, that reminds me, in those days, I actually had, believe it or not only hair, but long hair, ponytail and everything. Days, my friend.
We may have to sometime rename this show Walk Down Tech Memory Lane, because I tell you, there's so many good things looking back. It makes you appreciate the tech today of what your phones can do. And
yeah.
And well, I'm glad I'm looping back, but I'm glad your sister's pleased with the PC that she had to go with. It's working for her.
Well, like I said, you get into some of these situations, and the best machine for the job may not necessarily be a Mac.
Well, in the same way, there are people who really do not need to buy the iPhone 10.
Yeah.
If they just want basic communication, a little bit of web browsing, but have never done it, there's some pretty good $100 Android phones on Amazon that will do the job for them. Pop a SIM card in it and just try it out.
Well, one thing I always find, I think it's, I'm trying to remember which one of the companies I was reading about here recently, but one of the Chinese manufacturers, they cannot sell their phones in the U.S. at this point, which is
ZTE.
This is Xiaomi, I think it is.
Oh, well, you know, ZTE had that embargo because of breaking some rules, but that's been lifted. They had to pay a heavy fine.
Yeah, but I think it's pronounced Xiaomi or something like that. But they've tried, you know, and from what I understand, you talk to people who have done hands-on with the phone. Europeans are able to get them. A lot of course, the Asians are, and they say it's Apple quality in an Android phone, and it's also, you know, you're talking about a phone that's maybe half the price.
Right.
And that's why, you know, I think Apple, if they don't watch it, they're going to get their clock cleaned in China. You know, because you know, Chinese will look and they'll say, well, I've got two phones here. Basically, they do the same thing. Maybe the operating system's not as great as iOS 14 or whatever it may be in a couple of years. But, you know, they look at it and they say, you know, camera's better on the Android machine. It's a 20 megapixel camera. This one's 5G capable, and this one is, you know, and they're going to make that decision and then say, wow, and I'm paying half the price. And, you know, we've always talked about, you know, the Apple tax. It's beginning, you know, for me at least, I'm starting to look at it as a person who's getting near, you know, retirement age, looking at a fixed income. You start saying, is the Apple tax really worth it anymore? And I think for a lot of folks it is, because of the, like we always talk about, the ease of use, the consistency of things, being, you know, the interoperability between iOS and Mac OS is just incredible right now. But if you happen to be a person who just needs a phone for a phone and sending some text messages, and a person who needs a PC because you want to get on Facebook and maybe run a spreadsheet every once in a while and, you know, look at the web, what do you need a $1,700 or even $1,000 MacBook Air? What do you need?
Exactly. Well, you know, I'd mentioned this the other day when we were talking about maybe diversifying a little bit on the website, you know, or just trying some new things, and, you know, where we want to do. Well, you know, I do have a lot of Android experience. I thought Ruby had a really good suggestion. If we ever wanted an article, and maybe I shouldn't air this out on the air for the website, but I did want to tell you on air what she said, and I thought it was a great idea. I do have the experience, if we ever wanted to ever write an article about maybe the Android version of a software or anything like that. Yeah. She said have an article, call it Apples and Oranges. Compare the other side, the opposites. You know, they're both fruit, but let's look at the other one. I thought that was a great idea. Ruby, he gave 2 thumbs up.
I love that idea.
He said he loved it. No, he didn't say he loved you, but I'm sure he does like it. He said he loved it. She didn't say a word. She can probably hear me. What? Yeah. But, you know, I think, you know, I would be willing to do it. I know Dennis doesn't have any, but I still use Windows. I use Android. And I think we could bring in a few more readers and viewers to look at the orange side of things periodically.
Well, one thing, and you heard it here first, I thought I'd bring it up. And as you well know, I got, shall we say, bored with just doing Apple news every day. And we talked about that, I think, on our last episode. And you know, to be honest with you, it's like every day searching for articles, you know, that we hadn't covered previously was driving me crazy, because I'd sit there sometimes in the afternoon and I'm going, can I really write about another Apple store opening in, you know, Milan, Italy, or can I write about this? And I was frankly just, you know, burning out on it.
Right.
And so I started doing, and I don't know if anybody who's watching will, or, you know, has listened to it, but got a podcast that we call Tangible Tech. And the idea is that I wanted to start looking at technology as a whole, rather than looking at Apple and Windows or iOS and Android or something
Right.
like that. Look at technology more as a whole, how it affects us. And, everything we do nowadays has some sort of technology built into it. It's scary how embedded this is in our world. So I started thinking about, this thing, and I came up with the idea of tangible tech. I'm working on episode 5 now. Won't tell you what it's going to be about, but yeah, I will. Basically, episode 5 is going to be about a website that is going to accompany that. And Marty, I've got to hand it to you because you are the guy who said, maybe you ought to come up with a website that's a lot less work and, talks about a lot more than just Apple technology. And that's going to be the Tangible Tech website. I'll just say it's in works right now. It needs to be tweaked. We need to do a couple other things with it, but the idea there is that it's probably not going to be a lot of, I think occasionally we'll probably write special reviews and different things like that, but more, I just want to be able to get the news out to people in a format that is fast, easy to read. In a lot of cases, it's just going to be a link. We're talking the Daring Fireball Loop Insight type of website where we're going to provide a little teaser to the article. It's going to say it's from such and such a website. We'll have a quote from it, and I'll have maybe 1 or 2 lines that will say, should be interesting to see this, or wow, this is a really cool product. But the headline on that is going to be the link to the actual article. So yeah, we're going to be sending people over there. The hope is that enough people are going to say, wow, they're providing me with tons of things to look at. I'm going to go to that site, even though it is going to shoot me over to another website if I'm interested in this article. I'll do that. But for the most part, if I just want blasts of news, I'm going to be able to do it. And let me put it.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Well, it's. I won't tell you where it is, but it's up and running. Like I said, it does need some work, and that's kind of my job in the next couple of weeks. The other thing is that I think when I'm on my big trip coming up, starting in August, it's going to be much, much easier for me to, if I happen to be touring Cyprus or something like that, and or Crete or someplace like this, and I happen to be have my iPhone, it's a lot easier for me to actually go in and do a post, that's a link post than it is to sit there and write a full form.
Right. Well, I'm glad I had some part, at least planting the seed in your mind. And so, because I noticed whenever I suggested that to you on Slack, your last and final comment was, you only just said, like you were thinking about it, And so I'm glad. But I think that's a good idea. If the site gets a reputation as being a good repository of great links that people want to read, they'll come there and use it sort of like a card catalog or index as a jumping off point. And that'll generate some, ad traffic and the such like. So,
yeah, that's one of the other things I wanted to do too is right now we have been getting some criticism about the main site. And you probably remember my post from last week where I was, we had some guy who came on there and he said, I just can't stand the fact that, when I pull up the website, you've got this video running and the video is pulling off and, I don't want it there. I don't want to see it. And, well, we got rid of that. Basically, we still have the video, but it stays up at the top of the page. But this, I really almost took offense to it because it's like in a lot of cases when we decide that we're going to make a change to try to get a little bit more revenue on the website, somebody always gripes or complains. And I'm one of those people that I get one reader out of hundreds of thousands who says, I'm sorry, but this really bothers me. I feel, it's like I feel hurt.
Right.
And I did in this particular case. It was like, oh, come on. We're trying to survive here.
Well, I thought your response was good and well balanced, you know.
But what I'm thinking with the news site is, for a while, I'm probably not going to run any ads on it at all.
Right.
And if we end up getting some significant traffic, I'm just going to go with the sponsorship and say, this is it. We'll generate what we can from it, and goes into the big AWT pool that we have. But
Right.
I hope it works.
Like you said, that will be easy to maintain when traveling or doing anything, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's been kind of fun too. In fact, that's what the topic of my next podcast is going to be about. Is for a long time, I mean, seriously, since about the day that WordPress became available, that's what I used. And then when we decided to, come up with Apple World Today, I was looking for a way that we could have a very scalable, very fast hosting service, and I went with Squarespace, which I also used previously. But my heart's always kind of been there with WordPress because there's a huge community. There are millions of WordPress websites, and I just decided for this other site I was going to go with WordPress. So I'm going to talk a little bit about in the next Tangible Tech, what's the difference between these different hosting systems and these different content management systems, where I'm actually using a kind of pro version of WordPress that has some pretty interesting features that are available. So that'll kind of be fun to talk about as well.
Well, something about on the main site, not to have too much opposite or make it not like, opposite poles or something. But most sites, I read a lot of Android sites. I read a ton of Apple sites, both. But something to be a little unique is to have some, obviously the articles we do, but then some articles about the positive of this Android phone or this Android app. Have a site that can do a little bit of both.
Yep.
I'm not saying make us an Apple/Android world, but as she said, just every once in a while have a special article, maybe once a week, twice a month or something. Apples and oranges. Discuss the other side, what we have found and discussed. And,
yeah.
I'd be willing to write toward that,
Yeah, and I tell you, with the, taking a look at the Tangible Tech website when it's up and running, the one thing I really want to do is also, get away from computers and phones.
Right.
If I happen to see something that's really fascinating about home automation, we're going to talk about home automation. I don't care who the manufacturer is, we're going to talk about it.
Things like, for instance, we put in a Nest thermostat at our church building, and it probably in the first month alone lowered our bill $150 to $200.
Yeah.
Because we're having to keep it cooled or heated when we weren't there to be ready for when we were there. And so now, just a few hours ahead of time, have it ready, and our utility bills have plummeted. It paid for itself easily in 2 months.
Yeah.
But I like that idea of Tangible Tech.
Yeah, and like I said, I love talking about drones. I love drones. I think they're one of the coolest things out there. One of the things I've wanted to really do is almost talk about the backlash that there is right now against drones. And it's funny, here and I know it's happening in other states as well, but you see a lot of people who they'll be out flying and a cop comes up and says, "Why are you flying here? Didn't you know this is not where you can fly drones?" Or, they'll get people in the neighborhood calling up and saying, "I think this guy is spying on me." There's a lot of this going on. So I'm sure that's probably going to be a topic of discussion on one of the future podcasts. But like I said, with the website, I want to be able to actually go in and, if, there's, well, for instance, there was some news in the drone world think it was last week, DJI, which has a ton of the market right now for consumer drones and even professional drones, they came out and about a month ago, and they said, "Oh, by the way, we're going to have a big reveal." I think it was supposed to be today. It's either today or tomorrow, but they canceled it, and there was a lot of concern about this. What's going on? Or why aren't they coming out with this thing? Well, I think it's like a lot of companies. They tend to get into this release schedule thing. Apple is a perfect example of this.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, we have to get both the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 out in September. Well, they didn't ship the iPhone 10 until, what was it, November?
November.
And I think for some of these companies, it's like, just don't make the announcement until you're ready. Just wait. Whatever it's going to be, it's probably going to be good. They're probably just tweaking the
Right.
software right now. But it was funny how much people were like, "Oh my God, wonder why they're doing this. Oh, I wonder if it has something to do with tariffs, or which it doesn't." Um, the fact is, they think what the company is going to do, big deal here, is that they may take the Mavic Pro, which is their kind of I won't say high end, but it's a mid-range 4K video drone. It can fly for like 30 minutes. It's a pretty impressive little device. But right now, the camera can basically do this,
Right.
and it can go side to side. But of course, for the most part, it's just doing about a 90-degree bevel, or gimbal there. And another company, actually two more companies recently have come out with drones that do a full 180-degree gimbal. So you can literally fly beneath something and be looking up at it, if you wanted to do that, like look up at trees or look up at the top of a mountain. And so there was a lot of thought that, oh yeah, the Mavic 2 or whatever it may be will be one of these with a 180-degree gimbal. And so now there's all this concern. Oh my God, are they having problems with the gimbal design?
Right.
It's funny because it's sadly like what we see in the Apple and Android world, with a little perceived delay turns into, oh my gosh, are they having problems?
Well, and I think Apple, in a way, has hurt themselves and sort of painted themselves into a corner with having to release it September. Everybody just expects it,
Yeah.
It might not hurt them to break out and everybody wonder, well, why didn't you release it? We never announced it, and just wouldn't hurt to break the mold like they've announced that AirPad or whatever it's called to charge the 3 items. That's pushing a year late or since announcement.
Yes, it is.
So,
And that's, you talk about yet another thing that, it just surprises me how much press something like an accessory that
right.
showed everybody, isn't this cool? You're going to be able to lay these 3 devices down on there and they're all going to charge. Yay! Well, there's some interesting technology involved in that. And they probably, I'm glad they want to get it right.
Well, I do too. And I think we have come to expect it, but it's going to be hard for them to create some stunning new phone every year.
Yeah.
It's, you sort of reach a point, well, almost Moore's law applies just in design. And they talk about the design of the iPhone getting stale. It's almost like people complain about a basketball team because the design of the ball is stale. What more can you do? It's a ball. And you get to the phone, it's a slab of glass and metal. There's only really so much that you can do. And, I think if people are a little critical, they want Apple to work miracles every year, and they just can't. I tell you, I'm going to try something while we're on here since we're doing something new and we're approaching an hour. I wonder if I can share my phone.
Let's give it a try.
Yeah, I wanted to see if I could do that. Let me put the phone over here. Said the operation could not be completed, but it said that before. for what it's probably not this, but I am running the beta on here right now. And so we are, yeah, we almost don't have time, but I would really like to have you tell me about a third baseman pitching sometime.
like I did, or like I saw last Friday.
Yeah, that I thought that was pretty neat.
You know, what was pretty wild about that is, I mean, two teams ended up doing the same type of thing. Oh, there we are. I see your screen.
Do you only see the iPhone?
Yeah, the interesting thing is I'm not seeing it on Google right now. I am seeing it on, oh, no, it's showing up on YouTube. Never mind. It showed up.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll show one little quick tip if you want to before we go. I've been running the beta, and they've added something I cannot wait for people to start using. I think it'll be great at church and at schools and everything. You slide up, press and hold, do not disturb, and instead of just on or off, morning until I leave this location. That works great. I've tried it at church a couple of times. I click that, and I've had my wife watch as I drive, and I get maybe 300 feet from the church building. Do not disturb disables. It's really neat.
Beautiful.
And then I had an event tonight, Apple World Today broadcast. It checks my calendar and sees that I had an event, so I can just click to do not disturb until, you know, this broadcast is over.
Oh, nice.
That's really nice. I like that. And that's just a little thing, but that's going to help people so much. You won't, if you do leave this location, if you're in a movie or something, it's going to keep you from forgetting to turn it back on. So that's really all I had, but I thought that is such a neat tip. And I wanted to see if I could screen share using Google Hangouts. And
so you are running the beta, huh?
Yes, I am running it, and I find it faster than iOS 11. It's really snappy.
Oh, nice to hear that. Yeah, I'm a little bit, I don't know, a little bit wary of actually going in and putting the betas on this year because, like I said, I'm going to be gone for about a month. And the last thing I want to do is have, you know, try over a shipboard internet account, even though they keep getting better. But I really, really, really don't want to have to try to do a beta update. So that's going to be interesting. It's fascinating. I'm watching one of our cats over here, and she's been staring at something on the floor for at least 15 minutes now. So I don't know if it's a spider or what, but she's just been doing this.
Well, you might want to wrap it up here in a minute and check it. So, but
she's doing.
Yeah, I have found the beta extremely stable. I can tell it's actually snappier, even though it's a beta. It really, really runs good. So I think people are in for a treat come mid-September whenever they release it to the public. This is the public beta, but when they release it to people at large. It's got one neat feature that you can enable. I don't know how they're going to do this with the legalities, because you always have to agree to install software. They've got it, not just now the apps that you can update automatically, but the whole operating system. You can toggle it to always update automatically.
That is really, really nice.
Well, it is. For people that just want it to work, it's just going to do all the updates for you. So what do you think after we got going on Google Hangouts? I guess you'll have to send me the link each week because it'll probably generate a different one.
Yeah. Yeah, we, for those who are watching this after the fact, because it doesn't look like anybody's watching it live, but that's not unexpected. I was just going to say, you know, the tools that we're using are definitely going to be different. I'm probably going to change this to a blue backdrop because I don't have my ability to do my green screen anymore unless I find a app that will allow me to do that. I may have to see if I can get one.
You probably can find a Chrome plug-in for blue screen. So I
hope so. But it would sure be nice to, you know, have my brick wall back there, or a beach, you know, with waves.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Woo, you know, do that type of thing. But yeah, it's. We made it through another hour. I can't believe it.
And I was just looking here, if we get back on our schedule, as the British say. We're doing 1st and 3rd. It would be August 7th.
Yeah. And then it's going to be a little while. So
yeah, 3 weeks. Give us time to come up with some stuff. So I like 1st and 3rd. It lets people, they can keep up with it.
You know, we might consider doing July 31st.
That'll be fine. Yeah.
And yeah, just for the heck of it, that's 2 weeks from now. And yeah, because that would give us a chance to maybe get 2 shows in before I'm gone for a while.
So when are you going?
We leave August 15th.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would probably be good because, yeah, we could do that. And I doubt we could do one. Well, we could get back to 1st and 3rd. If we did one the 14th, that might be pushing a little bit for you.
Yeah.
Probably be packing and doing. So how long you'll be gone?
32 days.
Wow.
The longest vacation I've ever taken in my life. So this will be unique.
Yeah. Well, we'll try. We have at least one more show before you go.
That sounds like a winner. Yeah, we'll talk about it. And of course, for anybody who's watching the show, we'll be sure to let you know when we get to that point that we're going to be doing the next show. You can just check on Apple World today, and we'll definitely have that information.
I liked your post. I copied and pasted and shared it to Ruby about the All-Star game, the Midsummer Classic, our broadcast tonight.
Yeah, it's so funny about the All-Star game. I'm a baseball fan, but sometimes they just seem to almost overdo it with this thing. You know, it's like everything that anybody does is sponsored by some company. You know, one thing I do love is they've got some of the players wired, especially the outfielders. And so they're out there talking, you know, while they're playing the game. And that's really kind of fun. It's almost too bad they can't do that on a regular basis.
All right. Well, the reason I never watch it, I always like to watch it when it's canon, when it counts.
Yeah.
You know, All-Star game doesn't go in the record book, so I don't pay much attention to it.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, they you know, they used to have that thing where the winner of the All-Star game got the I don't know if it was home field advantage, you know, in certain situations. I can't remember what it was, but they ended up dumping that this year. So they're kind of back to it really means nothing. It's
exactly. Yeah, you're right. So
except if you happen to be a player and you've got a contract that was written by a really, really good agent, and they managed to get something in there where you get an extra $1 million for an All-Star appearance. And if you have the All-Star MVP, you get $2 million. That would be definitely worthwhile for a player.
That's about like our Apple World Today contracts, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's all relative.
I was going to say, by a factor, you know, take that down by a factor of several thousand.
Yeah.
We're about right.
Well, I think Google Hangouts worked out good for us. You know, it's a little almost confusing when you live stream and you'll say stream live now, but that's not the one you want. You can use that, but you have to load your own, you know, software to do the broadcast. And if you just hit live event, it will use Google software. It's so much easier.
Yeah, you know, and we do have some software. In fact, I've got to write a review of Mimo Live from our friends at Boink Software, and we could do some fancy stuff with it. You can have, you know, the split screens, and you can be doing, you know, a lower, like a crawl of your Twitter feed, you know, down at the bottom, and, you know, graphics that do all sorts of fun things, and green screens. But maybe we'll do that later. You know, right now we're just kind of getting back up to speed after we dropped Zoom. So,
well, so pretty good. I haven't even taken it off, so we're officially done with Zoom then. So I'll uninstall it.
I would say we're pretty well gone.
Well, you know, this works. It's free, and broadcasting instantly as we talk to YouTube is built in is a real plus.
It sure is. I was just going to say, Marty, if you can stay on for a second after I stop the broadcast, I just wanted to see if I can find a, I wanted to keep us on screen for a little bit here while I tried some stuff out.
All right, yeah, that'll be fine. I feel like I'm being called to the principal's office. Can you stay around after class?
And
Oh, yeah.
I've got to talk
Yeah.
about your, anyway. Well, thanks everybody for watching again. This was kind of a fun episode because I think it definitely took a turn for the, well, away from our general topic, which is usually Apple.
Yeah, it's a good talk, always is.
Yeah. And so,
And this might get viewers. We don't have our intro or outro tonight.
yeah. Yeah, you can't hear the well, maybe I'll play the music in the background.
Yeah.
Do that. Yeah, we'll have to get that up and running. I know that people really, really miss it.
Marty. They do. Yeah, well, I'll stay around then.
Yeah, well, thanks again, Marty. And
yeah, it was fun.
We'll see if we can do another one in 2 weeks. And thanks once again from us at Apple World Today. Sure appreciate you being around. Have a good one.